This series is really bringing together our shared expertise to address real life educational challenges, provide actionable insight, and build a supportive community in our virtual space for homeschooling and traditional school families alike. And our goal is to really ensure that no one feels that they have to navigate this space, this journey alone. So yay. We're ready. We're ready now. Like y'all know now. Y'all know what we're qualified for, what we're passionate about. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. So today's topic, as you all saw in our cute flyer, like okay, we're in the season of just progress reports. I know with my homeschool co-op community, I just like finished a round of parent meetings and really being intentional about like, how are we supporting our children? Whether your child is in a homeschool program or going to school, is really a partnership. And what does that partnership look like? So that we ensure that you're not in the space of like, oh my God, my child is falling behind. Or maybe as parents, sometimes we feel like we're falling behind because we're not aware. Things move so quickly, you're falling behind. And what do you do? What do you do to get there? So that's why our first live is starting right here. And we have three. Okay, just 3 points that will help you be more intentional about how to support your child, how to support yourself in this journey so that you don't, when you feel that, you know exactly what you need to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, our first point of the day is we're really starting at the foundation here. And that
Yeah.
foundation always comes with the mindset. And as a homeschooling parent or a teacher or just a parent who is really involved in their child's academic journey, your mindset on anything dictates what your actions are going to be and how you're going to move to support your child through this journey. And so when we think about falling behind, one thing we want to talk about today is redefining what falling behind actually is. And is it really falling behind? Am I freaking out over something that's not a big deal? Or am I missing something that my child is not telling me and therefore is impacting their academics in a way that I was not aware of? And so for this first little section, we're going to be giving some tips and strategies on how to redefine and change your mindset as to what falling behind actually means and how you can support your child through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'm thinking about my teacher brain and a parent coming to me and saying like, oh my gosh, my child is falling behind. Or even new families that come to me, they're like, oh my gosh, I decided to homeschool because they're so behind. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't, like, how do I get them there? And I usually tell them like, hold up. Like we need to look at your individual child. Usually when you think about falling behind, you're comparing to something, someone, and that really isn't helpful because you're in a space of panic. You need to think really intentionally about your individual child or children and think about what their needs are, where they're starting, get that benchmark, that baseline data, like where are we starting, and really set some, practical goals for how to move forward. So I love that, shifting your mindset, right? Like, what does it mean? Are we comparing it to the standards? Are we comparing, you know, like why are we even doing the compare? What do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy. Like, let's hold off on that. Let's reground in what it is that we hope to see. And then we can like reshift, like you said, shift our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because where your child may be strong at, another child may have challenges.
Yeah.
So we're all going to have challenges. Like my challenge, I was a really great student, but my challenge was math.
Yeah.
I mean, even though I kept my grades up, I remember getting my first C in math. I mean, that wasn't a shocker. Well, I was in like trigonometry, but I quote unquote could have been falling behind, but that was my challenge and that was my struggle. So, it's important to, like you just said, really take a look at your individual child. Where are they shining in their strengths? Where are you seeing their challenge? And then that's where you make the plan. One other thing that is to note is sometimes like things that are going on in your child's life, whether you know it or not, especially if you have older kids. I don't know how many younger kids are on like the social media or whatever, but if there's something going on in their life that can impact how they're doing in school. I mean, a prime example, I wouldn't say a prime example, but a simple example is, say they have a friendship breakup, or they are in a relationship, boyfriend and girlfriend, and they break up. We as adults might not think that, oh, you'll get over it, that's not a big deal. But for them in their very small world, that is a huge deal.
Yeah.
Maybe they're on social media and they're comparing themselves to their friends, their looks, their likes. That's something that we had to deal with when we were older. And, you know, we had to compare, like, oh, they're getting likes, this picture's not getting likes. But imagine that happening to an impressionable 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grader. Those, or they're getting bullied, people aren't, you know, so these types of things can really impact how your child is doing in their academics, because their mind is not going to be focused on 2 + 2 = 4, or what happened in 1917 in the United States. They're focused on, man, my friends don't like me and I feel lonely at school and I don't have anybody to talk to.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put my head down in class and start to fall behind.
That's so
And I
good.
think that's
Because
yeah,
when you
it's
think about
especially
older kids, you know, like that's not their goal. Maybe the academic part where you're like you're falling behind, the goals are not aligned. Their goal might be something social. So I think it's so important before you say, "Oh, my child is falling behind," to really ask yourself, like, where the goals align with you and your child's goal for where they should be going academically or socially or emotionally or whatever. The school's goal. Like, are you aware of what the goal was in the first place before you can even say that you're falling behind? Because, like I said, sometimes you're not even connected with it. So it's like, were you behind if you never really started? So really, it really helps to redefine that, like really ground in the reality to say, actually, you know, we fell behind, like we fell off track because we weren't intentional about that goal, right? Our goals weren't aligned. We didn't include the child on that goal. I think, yes, with older kids, you're like, oh yeah, let me include you. But even the littles, they can be included on, hey, I really want you to practice this. Like, wouldn't you like to learn this? Or don't you see how learning this might connect with something that you're really, you know, passionate about? I think about my kids with their games, you know, the strategy. Like, oh, if you are more resilient and strategic when you're solving math problems and identifying patterns, and you're going to be better at your game. Making that connection for them, like, oh, okay. I think about one of my students who, she's an artist. Like, she really loves to do art, and she's like, if it's not art, I really don't want to do it. But it helps to make that connection for her to see, like, actually, if you create a goal to improve your communication skills, you'll realize that this is going to help you down the line when you own your own art gallery and you have to speak to people. So I would definitely redefine what falling behind is. Work with your children, work with your teachers of your child to really set the goal together, right? And then move forward. You know, move forward thinking about where your individual child's baseline is, and set those small benchmarks of achievement, of success that you want to see, and celebrate that, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
which actually seamlessly goes into the next point, is that every child progresses at their own pace.
Yes.
And these academic gaps that are there can be opportunities to strengthen those foundational skills. So, you know, it goes back to that individualized, intentional plan that you have for your child. You know, the young lady who wants to be an artist needs to know that art is business. So you're going to have to know your math. You're going to have to know how to do that and calculate, so you can sell your piece at its top price and you can get that profit margin. Like, you're going to have to know those things, or else you're just going to you just want to be an artist.
Yeah.
That's not how life works, right?
Yeah.
So also, it once you begin to redefine what falling behind or what success looks like for yourself, then your child, you know, they often don't really do what you say, they do what you do.
Yes.
And you're really their inner voice that begins to bud up. So like, your child is going to start saying, like, well, they're going to start having a growth mindset about themselves. It's okay that I didn't do well on this test this time. That's because I didn't understand this, that, and the third. So next time I know that I need to look at this a little bit more, study this, or ask a question so that I can do better the next time.
Yes.
You know, so that they can also
Reflection.
learn, like, just because I got a C on my exam and my friend got an A on their exam, that's because they're good at. Maybe I need to talk to my friends so that they help me out. So they're not looking at as a deficit, but really like as a challenge to get better.
I love that. Yeah, we definitely have to build in that reflection because even as parents, if we're reflecting, like, hey, I think we are falling behind, right? It's not my child fell behind. We are falling behind because we're not being intentional about the small things that we do every day that are going to lead us to our goals. So I love that. Fall, just being able to set achievable goals for ourselves as the adults, as the as the models, and then engaging our children in what that looks like. So another example, with I have a 12-year-old son, and a lot of his learning as a homeschooler, he likes to do it independently. So when we start a new unit, we'll look at the unit together and we'll decide, like, how long do you think this is going to take, based on what you know and what you feel really confident about, based on like just looking over upcoming skills. Maybe some things are fully new and you're going to need some time, and we'll map it out. And then each day we'll decide, like, what's the percentage that we need to get to? Are we going to do 10% a day, 20% a day? And being really intentional about my child being able to take ownership of that, but then realizing as a parent, like, it's also my responsibility to say, hey, remember, you agreed that we were going to do this by then. And in order for us to get to that long-term goal, we have to do these small things each and every day. Even with my youngest, who's 6 years old, it's the same thing. It's like, hey, and then the reward is like, you want to do this thing, right? And in order for us to get there, then these are the small steps that we take throughout the day, throughout the week, in order for us to gain that bigger reward. And when we put it into perspective for our children and chunk it, then it's manageable, right? And we're not panicking when we're getting closer to that deadline and trying to figure out what really happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And honestly, as we mentioned before, the next step is, if you feel as the adult, you feel overwhelmed or you don't know what to do, have that self-reflection in yourself and, I guess humility to know when you need some help, when it's time to ask for some help from somebody in your community.
So good.
Because we don't always have all the strengths to get everything done. And so that's why we create spaces like this to do that. But even if you are in a traditional school, how are you building relationship with your child's teachers? How are you building relationship with other parents that can that may be going through something similar or have gone through this to support you in that way? Because when your child sees that it's okay that you're asking for help, or that you're not going to the teacher because they're being bad, but it's to actually support them, it shifts the relationship that you have with school. And it shifts the relationship with the teacher, because as a former teacher, I did make it a point to reach out to parents, good, bad, and different, so that the student knows, like, oh, she got my back.
We're in community. Good. Yeah, I'm in community. We're in partnership, right? And it's not always about calling out the bad. Like, we're working together. I want to know how you're feeling, what your strengths are, and how to leverage that for you to reach your goal. And then I love what you said. We cannot go through this alone. Children have to see us asking for help. They have to see us also using tools appropriately, like using tools to help with accountability, using tools to help with communicating. Like, I think it's really important. Like, we won't dive so deep into that. Like, I'd love for folks to like subscribe more to the work that we're doing, and we definitely have a lot of tools to help with goal setting, a lot of tools to help with just plan. We're teachers. We like to plan. Like, we get into it. So it really takes being intentional when it comes to understanding your child's progress and really where you want them to go. And then also that alignment between what are the values that are important at home, and then what are the values that are being brought up at school, and making that connection. So whether you're an artist, whether you're a gamer family, whatever the thing is that your child is also passionate about, but you also want to provide that opportunity for them to grow in that space, but also connecting it to other learning opportunities. Because I think all of us, our schooling experiences have made us think that everything is in these like buckets, right? And then that's it. Like, I know going to school, like, I'm not going to use that. Like they have to see the real world hands-on connection to the things that they're doing so that they're bought into creating a goal around my multiplication facts
Yeah.
or creating a goal around being able to write a multi-paragraph and using specific details. They have to see how that's going to connect for them now and in the future.
Yeah.
And then also like how the next point that we're going to get into is just like how are we monitoring that? Like once we identify our goal, and you know, we got the baseline. We're like, okay, I'm not going to be comparing my child or myself or like my family to other families and where they are and what they're doing. This is where we are, like being really real about where we are and then making those steps of where we want to go, right? And being intentional about those steps. Those little buckets that I'm pointing to, that's where we're talking about measuring, like actually stopping to monitor your progress to getting there so that you can reflect and make adjustments, because it's all about making adjustments. There's, you know what they say, like there's no this is the through way, like this is the way I'm going to go. It just doesn't work like that.
It does not work like that.
Yeah.
And with two special educators on the line, part of our job was to progress monitor our caseload to make sure that they are meeting their goals. So when we had to rewrite their IEPs, we would showcase, you know, on these days, this is what we did, how we made interventions in order to make those goals. Now, as a homeschooling family or a homeschooling parent, what do you know about progress monitoring? Maybe you did that when, I mean, I don't have kids, so correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe you did that when your child was very little. Like, are they
The
sleeping?
doctor
You
gave you
know,
the paper, you're like, oh yeah, they're doing those things,
what
right?
interventions do I need to make?
Yeah.
Are they feeding? Are they doing this? But that type of like, I want to say like intentionality around child growth when they get a little older tends to like go away because they just, in academics, you have their teachers there, you have this there, you have that there. But if you do make the decision to like have complete ownership over your child's education, then this technique of intentionally progress monitoring where your child is going to help you see if you're on track for meeting those goals or not. And when we say progress monitoring, listen, it doesn't mean you're going to write some dissertation
No.
or you have to have like charts, all like the crazy guy with all the charts and the thing on your wall. It's as simple as maybe you're doing a check-in, create a routine where you review what was learned each day and you're taking a mental note from that baseline, right? So maybe you notice that your child is struggling in math. That's your baseline. They're not really good at addition. This is where they are. They answered 2 out of 5 questions correct. We're going to have to do some work on that. So how am I making an intentional effort to check in on that progress?
Yeah.
Am I asking them a question about it at the grocery store? Am I asking them to rephrase to me what we went over today in our lesson to see if they're grasping any of the information? Am I even maybe giving them an extra little assignment to see how they've grown from 2 out of 5 questions to maybe 3 out of 5 answers correct? That is how you become intentional about progress monitoring.
Yeah, it can be game based. You can play a game together. Now everybody, like Roblox has games in there that are educational. Y'all can hop on and play a game together. You'll notice how quickly they're able to respond, their fluency in a specific space. Reading together, you know, there's so many informal ways to progress monitoring, but I think there's a theme here. You have to be intentional about it. It cannot just pop up down the line. You're like, exclamation point, like something's going on here. You have to be intentional about it regularly. And as a parent, as a busy parent or a caregiver that's doing a lot of things, you know, it's just scheduling that time every week, just taking that time to check in, to say like, how's it going? Or like, let's do this together. It involves a lot of togetherness and really just paying attention. Otherwise, yeah, it is alarming because then all of a sudden things just come up and you have no idea on how you got there.
Yeah, so I think one thing y'all are going to notice in these talks that we have, that a lot of it comes back to self. Like now that you notice that you have the exclamation point that your child's falling behind, now it's coming to you.
Yeah.
How can I be intentional about this? Because my intentionality is going to dictate whether or not I can see my child progress or if they're going to continue to, quote unquote, not meet the markers for their age group.
Yeah.
So, maybe.
You know, we're in the fourth quarter of the year. You know how it is. Even January's going to come around, and we set goals for ourselves. It's the same for our children. We have to involve them in that process, but we can't just set it and forget about it. You have to set it. You have to be very, smarty. Create a smarty goal. Like, be
Well,
really.
we didn't really. We are
Go for
talking
that.
around like setting goals and all that a
Yeah.
lot. Well, do you have any like strategies on how people can set these goals? So once I like this flow. Oh no, we have a problem. We've noticed a problem, and we see where our child is at. Well, before we get to progress monitoring, well, I guess you could progress monitor and then set some goals, but say you want to go ahead and set some goals. What are some things that people can do to like write the goals out loud? I mean, we're the generation
I
of
do
manifesting,
think it's
stuff
super
like that.
important before you even set the goal. You do have to be real. You can't be that person that's in denial. Like, that's wrong. Like, there's no way like that. They can't do that. I know they could do that. It's like, do you? Have you actually been collecting details to say that when
Can
did you
they?
see them do it? Did they do it with your probing? Did they do it with you like looking like
Whispering the
how
answers
much
to them?
support did they need in order to do it? Were they able to do it showing mastery? Like, are they able to explain it fully, right? So I think it is really important for us, like when we feel that way, to be really honest. Sometimes folks are in denial and they're like, that's not my child, not my baby. I know. So it does take to maybe some time to really, when you get that alarm, to take some time to collect, do some observing, like really see, engage, and see where your child is, whatever it is, math, writing, science, social studies, communication, right? Whatever it is, and really get an idea of what's happening. Once you have that real reality of what is going on, then he's like, okay, I know this is what's happening, but in reality, like, I would really like to see my child way up here, because as parents, and then talking to them about what is realistic for them in their growth. Like, what's real? Yes, they're gonna get there. In all the years of our parenting, we want them here. They'll get there, but we have to put in the work of like involving them to say, being very specific. What is it? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. Not that big goal, but the smaller points.
Hold on.
That's the progress
Can you
monitoring.
repeat that? Can you please repeat that acronym for SMART, because we hear
Oh,
it all the
smart,
time. What
specific,
is
measurable.
specific?
So let's say, if we have an example, reading, right? You want your child to improve their reading fluency, right? So you're saying, hey, this is what I want them to be able to read and not stop and be all over the place and look at me for the word, like confidence, right? And to be able to understand it. So that's one piece. I know what I'm working on. And to say measurable is like, okay, I know that they're going to be able to read 3 lines, 3 sentences of this book that we're practicing, or this poem or whatever, without any help. And if we're doing this every day for a week, once a day for a month, whatever it is, that you're able to say, like, out of that time, they're going to hit it like this many times. And then again, it doesn't have to be that detailed. That's a teacher brain. Like,
Yeah.
we breaking it down. But I do think it's important to involve your child. Like I said, it's so simple. My son, does his learning. We're starting our new math unit. We look at the math unit. We say, we're going to complete unit 4 by the end of December, right? We're starting next week. We're starting the first week of December. It's going to be done by the end of December. How many weeks are in December? How many working weeks? Because we're taking off. Like, okay. So then we have to be real, right? We have that part about being achievable and relevant. We have to be real, because he's like, I'm finna take 2 weeks off from Christmas to the January, whatever, right? So we have to be real. So it's really like, oh, you only have 3 weeks to finish the unit. Is that realistic? Let's look at this unit. Is it building on skills you already have, or are these completely new skills? And he's like, well, I do know some of these, so I kind of know something. Matter of fact, yeah, I got this. Like, I know some of these skills. Some of them are new, right? So I know I'll be able to breeze through this. This is going to take me time. And then be able to say, every day I'm going to hit 10% a day. That's measurable. So when a week, 5 days comes, and then I'm like, are you going to work all 5 days? Like, I don't know. I like to have a break on Friday and not do math. So it's like, okay, you only have 4 days, so now you need to do 15% or whatever. He has to have some accountability into getting it done. If he misses Monday, then he knows that he has to divide what he needed to do on Monday between the 3 other days. It's like, it's just that,
Yeah.
right? We don't always write that down, right? But we have an agreement. What did we say? Okay, but sometimes if you know the type of person you are and you need to write that down, you
Right
need to write it out,
now,
put it on a post-it
put it
note,
on a
right? And
note.
then check. But it does require, oh, the preteen, he's almost a teenager. It requires a check-in. Did you do your 15% today? Okay, if not, and there's no gripe like, okay, I didn't get to it. I really been working hard today, mom. I want to play games. Okay, so what's your plan? How are you going to pivot? What are you going to do to make sure that by the end of December it's done? All right, tomorrow I'll divide it up throughout the week. So that's really what it means to be smart. Have that time in there, be really, really specific. Make sure it's measurable, that you can see, check your progress, like you know what you're looking for. And it's achievable. So you feel confident that you can do it,
Yeah.
that you're entering the goal with
Yeah.
confidence. Like
Yes. And that's my
it's
favorite.
necessary.
That's my favorite part of the SMART goal is achievable, because we be making goals that can be very unrealistic, and then you're setting yourself up to fall behind. You're setting yourself up for that failure
We
because
do that.
we do it because
Yeah.
you're not really setting yourself up for what you actually can achieve. And so
Yes.
if it is just 3 lines out of a book that you want your child to read, that's okay. It doesn't have to be reading a whole chapter. It doesn't have to be reading the whole page, because once they have that foundation of reading those 3 lines, it's going to grow. Okay, next week, let's try 6. You did 3. Good job. Next week, let's try 6. Or next month, next quarter, let's try 6. Learning takes time, and I think that we're not computers. We're not ChatGPT. We're not AI. So all of these skills are going to take time to learn and grow. So even if you have your child, for example, within the public school system, still maybe your child has an IEP within the school system, and you're saying like, well, why is this goal, he's going to read 3 lines, for the whole year? Well, the kid has 5 different other subjects. He wants to have fun with his friends. He only has 30 minutes with his intervention specialist to go over this. And if you're not also helping him at home, that means he's only having 30 minutes, 5 days out of a week to achieve a goal of reading 3 lines.
Yeah.
That's why it's achievable. So
Yeah.
I really, really love that aspect of the SMART goal, because, hey, you're going to have to, it has to be achievable, because if it's not, then you're just setting yourself up for failure. And then this SMART goal also helps you break down that big goal of reading the chapter book into small chunks. Reading the chapter book, if you have struggles with reading, is scary, because I can't even read the first 3 lines of the page. So how am I going to get there? So how about we're going to break it down? It may take the whole year to get through the chapter book, but then you made it through the chapter book, and that is a win. And so another thing that I really love that you said too is celebrating those small wins. So when they read those 3 lines, you gotta celebrate that, because it wasn't an easy feat. Reading is not, well, I know we're not talking about reading and everything, but that's not an easy skill. Much of our country are actually functioning illiterates.
Yeah.
So to be able to teach somebody how to do that, you got to pat yourself on the back, but you got to give them a pat on the back too, so that they have the resilience, because then soon you'll see them in the corner reading by themselves. And that's really where you want them to get to.
It is magical. Yeah. Because that is something that we're not just picking that up. Science of reading, guys, check it out. Like, you're not just picking it up. We have to be really intentional about, especially English, like how we learn our language. Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is so good. And you kind of hit on the growth mindset. Like, we have to have a growth mindset. We have to use the proper language with them. Like, hey, you can't do this yet, or you're going to get there. Like, it takes time. And we said this already, but it really is here with us first. Because if you don't have that, you're not always intentional about the goals you set for yourself, right? Maybe we're going to then have unrealistic goals for our children. If we are not speaking to ourselves with love and care, and having that growth mindset ourselves as adults, like, how does that reflect for our children? So, yeah.
Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. Yeah. Well, what you're going to find is that all of this work is very deeply personal and self-reflective. You're going to be doing some things like, geez, I might need to go to therapy. You might, because it's going to help. Listen, after teaching, I was like, goodness.
Yeah.
I thought I knew myself,
Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
I could use some work.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right. Well, I mean, we pretty much hit through our 3 points. So just a quick recap, you know, if you feel like your child is falling behind, get over the shock. Okay, we're going to be shocked. Then we're going to redefine what falling behind looks like, what it is, and is it really falling behind? Do that social emotional check-in, like a real one.
Real check-in.
And don't just do it once a month. You should be checking in with your kids more than that, but do that social emotional check, because it might not be that they aren't capable. Something else could be going on in their lives. And then if that's not the case and it is academic, then dive in. You want to set achievable and realistic goals, and then be intentional about how you are monitoring those goals so that you can see if your baby's making progress. Because especially if you're homeschooling here in Florida, you have to do the evaluation at the end. So you're going to have to showcase progress from your child one way or another. And what better way than already be doing that throughout the year?
Throughout. We're not doing that as a it's not for compliance. Like, you're not doing that like, oh, I'm just checking off a box. We're doing this to be intentional. Say, is this even appropriate for where my child is right now? Like, is it, or like, even on a bigger scale, like, oh, my child could be exposed to something different, like something more meaningful and challenge is where it's at. I always tell my children, my students, like, when you mess up at something, that's where the learning happens. I don't want to see you raising your hand and getting all the right answers all the time. Because what am I here for? What are we doing this for? Like, learning comes when you're making those mistakes. So yes, embrace the challenge, embrace it when it gets hard, and be really reasonable about what you need to do. And eventually, the hard things become easy, and then you move on to the next hard thing. It's not about staying in a space where it's not going to be breezy. Like, these are the steps to help you to be intentional. It's not going to be easy in that process. You're going to have to pivot often. And then once you master it, you move on to the next challenge, and you just rinse and repeat and do these same strategies of being really intentional about where you are and collecting that baseline, redefining falling behind, redefining what advance or whatever, and then setting those goals and then monitoring it. Okay, monitoring it, and see, you're like, okay, on to the next challenge.
There it is. Because when you spoke about being a holistic organization, that is holistic, because you're building that resiliency so that when they eventually leave your home and off to adult world, even though I still be calling my mama at 30, there's resiliency built within because they know the steps when I'm faced with a challenge.
I know what to do. I know I know it works when I'm having a challenge. I know it works. I need to focus. I need to reflect. Right? I need to lean into my community, right? Whether it's your mama, your best friend, your teacher, your mentor, your coach, lean into my community, because sometimes we don't see it. We're like, I got this. I don't know why I keep doing this. Your community is like, come here, baby. You notice you just did that like 3 times. Sometimes you do need that outside look, and that's why your community is so important. And then they can share their resources of what they know works for them, because sometimes you do have to switch it up. But that is the space that we're creating here with Empower Together. So I'm excited for what's coming next.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you all so much who stayed on or who's watching a little bit later. We appreciate it. We'll be doing this once a month.
Yeah.
So check us out next month. We'll keep you updated on our pages. And my collabo people, I'm obviously in a period of transition and change. But
she's here. She's in the community. She's doing the work.
Yes. Tatiana's bringing me out into the light so I can shine. You see how I did that? So
she's shining. Yeah.
So we're here, and I'm excited to come on next month and kick it with you.
All right. See
you. Bye.